Anita Matt,
Present.
Sharmel Gillen, James Steele Jr.,
Una.
Carol Langford, Len Tootieth, Bing Matt,
I'm here.
Ellie Bundy,
Present.
Martin Charlo,
Present.
Mike Dawson,
I'm here.
James Steele Senior.
Carol, can you start us off with a prayer this morning, please?
Sure, Madam Chair. Creator, today we just ask you to watch over us as we take care of issues for our membership. We just ask you to be with all the families who are out traveling in this weather and make sure they get home safe or get to their location safe. And we just ask you to be with our military and their families through this holiday season, and first responders and police who are always out there on the front lines. We just ask you to be with them. And we also ask for a special prayer to all the families who have recently lost loved ones. Just be with them as we get close to the holiday season. It's a struggle to get through it, and we just ask you to be with them and keep them safe and strong. And we ask for a prayer for all of the holiday events that are coming up, and brings us all joy and happiness. And we just ask you to be with this council today as we make the decisions. Komiate. Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you, Carol. We have a set of minutes from December 7th.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Ellie.
Abby, on page 3, where it starts with Len Tootieth gave an update. Third sentence down, it says how many animals were going to be called. It should be culled. And then also that same correction on page 4. The paragraph starts with Rhonda Swaney, Dan Ducker, and Jordan Thompson. The very last sentence in that says elk calling at the bison range, should be elk calling.
Madam Chair. Thank you. Abby, on page 6 of 7, towards the bottom where I made a comment about the large land-based tribes and small land-based tribes, could you strike that last sentence? We have a bigger land base and deal with hunting and fishing. Thanks. Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes with corrections of December the 7th, 2021.
Okay, motion by James. Second by Carol.
Madam Chair, I have a correction or a.
Okay, go ahead, Carol.
When I was gone to Las Vegas, I was not only at Unaha, I was at Ameren, and then also the legislative conference.
Okay, on page 6, the email from J Span, self-governance, Span, it has 2 A's in it. Thank you, Abby. Any other corrections? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Okay, we have an agenda and we have one walk-in. Francis Pierre. Martin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be giving my COVID update in open. Thank you.
Go ahead, Carol.
There is a tribal member intake referral form 2 in the packet with Sam Barnaby. That one's not
Yeah, I believe it's being taken care of with housing. Madam Chair. Go ahead, Anita.
I would make the motion to approve the agenda for December 14th, 2021.
Motion
with
by
the
Anita,
additions.
second by Ellie. All those in favor? Motion carries. Unanimous.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Bing.
hey, I put that little crying face on there and I meant to hit the thumbs up, but I hit the wrong one. So sorry about that.
We knew what you meant. Thank you. Okay, we'll start off with Frank Pierre. Good morning, Frank.
Hello. I'm here today to get some answers if I can. About over a year ago, I had a fall outside here on the council's sidewalks and stuff. It was due to neglect of on the maintenance department for keeping a safe environment for workers and public. Because of this, I've really been in a lot of pain and I haven't been able to do a lot of things to keep up on stuff. And when I ask for things, all I get is that we'll get back to you and stuff. And nobody's really ever gotten back to me. I talked with Len Two Teeth one day this happened and he said he was gonna look to see if there was a video on it and stuff, and because he said he almost had an accident too, and he was going to check into it and get back to me, and he never has. I've talked with Rick Inyes, and he promised me that he would get back to me on a request that I had put on some things that I need that I'm unable to do because of my injuries. I'm unable to do stooping, bending, or lifting. And it's been on the doctor's thing many times. I'm not just, I've had it with people saying that they'll get back to me and not doing it. I mean, I've tried to go through the elders program to get things, requests and stuff, and I don't know what's going on there. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to get answers, and I hope that nobody else has these kind of issues and going through the same kind of things I've been going through.
So does it look like Len is here today? Have you applied to services through the elders program?
Yes, I have. I mean, you know, that's why I'm here. I mean, like I said, I need answers. Either going to help me or not. I mean, I've asked council to give me answers too, and I still haven't got no answers from anybody. Not even no concern or anything. I mean, I'd be concerned if somebody got injured and it wasn't their fault.
Carol, and then Anita.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm just curious, Frank, is this one or the other? Do you need assistance from the elders program? Or are you here about the fall and there's possible lawsuit?
I'm not looking for a lawsuit, Carol. I mean, people used to take care of one another and stuff, you know.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to find out. So what kind of assistance do you need? We can get you the help you need, but what do you need right now?
I had that written down and Rick said that he was gonna make 10 copies of it and give it to every one of you.
Okay, Rick's in the back room. We can ask him.
He says he doesn't have it.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Council. I told Francis earlier today, I apologize, I didn't realize that I had promised to send it out to council. We'd been working through tribal health and DHRD. Jen is going to send this to you now. Some of the requests are things through DHRD Elders Program, and others are tribal health. When Francis fell last year, we turned that into the insurance company, and they did an investigation and found that there was no fault at that point. I put tribal health in contact with Francis to make sure that we were at least doing everything we can from a medical standpoint. And so that's kind of where it stands in the process right now. There are a few things on the list that you'll see that we won't be able to cover, but I apologize for not getting this in front of council as I had promised.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, usually Rick doesn't get that stuff to us. He gets it to the proper channels that can handle it. And I see Patricia standing up. Maybe she has seen the list and
You know,
knows what
I'd like
she
to
can
say
handle.
something. I'd like to say, I also spoke to that insurance lady and stuff, and at the end of our discussion, she said that she mentioned that she was sorry for my unfortunate accident. So when I said that, also you admit it was an accident, she hung up on me. I mean, that's the kind of help I've been getting.
Okay, Anita?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and Frank asked me about this a couple weeks ago, and I got a hold of Rick, and Rick said he was working on the list. I understood yesterday from Constance that they did go out and fix the door, and they were waiting for Francis to fill out some application for a ramp. And they were going to try to get that much done, but I had understood that Rick had already had Patricia working on it and Tribal Health. So I was waiting for an update as well. Thank you.
Okay, Patricia?
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair and council. Thank you, Madam Chair and council. Sorry, learning the buttons. Since I oversee both DHRD and Tribal Health, I recommend that Francis and I have a conversation, and I work directly to see if we can expedite services to help with his need.
Thank you. So Frank, if you wanna visit with Patricia, she can help you with both the Tribal Health and DHRD issue.
I mean, you know, it's just like before, I'm getting the runaround. I have to go here and have to go there. And it's like when my mother was alive and stuff, I had to go through a bunch of crap and still got no help. This is, like I said, I just hope others aren't treated like this. I just get upset when I see things like this going on. Anyway, if I could get your answer in writing and stuff, I'd be happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. It looks like Len has joined us.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Sorry I was late, having internet problems.
Okay, Martin, did you want to give your update?
Sure, thanks, Madam Chair. So our area, again, like I said last time, is doing better. Numbers are dropping. Last time I knew, I think our numbers were Jen. Sorry, there's feedback when we got two mics on. But really, right now, what's going on, I feel really important. Probably more so than COVID right now is mental health. Had a close call with someone yesterday. Thankfully, this individual reached out and got help before. Yeah. And you know, I think that COVID is kind of uncovered a lot of different things. Mental health is one of them, or the lack thereof, for help and things for people. We don't pay much of attention as we should, and you know, make sure you check on people, especially in this sad time. You know, we have a lot of people that suffer from mental health issues, and a lot of people don't show them until it's too late, or you know, they've reached that point, and really take things seriously. You know, thankfully my situation ended in a, you know, thankfully it was snowing out, you know, thankfully I could follow tracks. You know, a lot of people don't have people that respond back to them and do it quickly. So, you know, people reach out and they're struggling or they're hurting. You know, do the thing, the right thing. You know, get them help. You know, 911, ambulance, whatever. You know, don't wait. And you know, continue. I mean, that's the one thing too. Is like, you know, their hurt doesn't go away, their suffering doesn't go away, their kind of issues don't. So yeah, that's what's on my mind today. COVID numbers. I'll send my condolences to the, looks like we're up to 88 in Lake County. So I think we've lost 3 since my last report. Condolences to them, their families. You know, this is still serious. People are still dying. So do your part. Be smart, follow science, don't follow all the rhetoric. And if you're, you know, not being safe, mask up and do what you can to protect people. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, next up we have Ronan and Hot Springs Telephone, Jay Preston and Company.
Is it okay if I take this mask off to speak? Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, I had this on a file and I put it on a jump drive and
Apparently grabbed the wrong one.
I brought the wrong jump drive. So I guess I'll just have to refer to my paper copy. This is an annual requirement. Oh, wait a minute.
He just said they put it up.
Oh, okay. Meeting with the tribal council is an annual requirement for incumbent local exchange carriers.
Wait.
I was just gonna say, prompt me when you want to go to the next page and everything, so.
Oh, so tell him the next page, sure.
Okay, sure. And this year, I think there's a special need to consult with the tribe and the council. And the reason is because, can some of these be turned 90 degrees? The other way. There we go.
I think if you back up one.
If we could go to the second page right now.
Yeah, I've got two.
There we go.
There.
The reason I think this is an important time is we have a historic opportunity, I believe, to get funding for telecommunications infrastructure, both nationwide and here on the Flathead. And the reason is there are 3 bills that were passed. End of the year, last year, there was the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, which was $2.3 trillion nationwide. And that out of that, the NTIA, which is the Department of Commerce, National Telecommunications Information Administration, funded $1 billion to what's called the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, or TBCP. Then in March of this year, the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, was passed. That was 1.9 trillion nationwide. The state legislature got approximately 900 million out of that appropriation, and they dedicated 270 million to telecom infrastructure statewide. And Access Montana is one of the qualified carriers to apply for some funding out of this pot of money. And then just this last month, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021 was passed. That's 1.2 trillion. Out of that, the Department of Commerce, NTIA, added $2 billion to the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Fund. And the act allocated $42.5 billion to states and territories, which will be administered by NTIA and distributed to the states. That will likely add a minimum, I think, of 200 million to the 270 that the state is currently preparing to accept grant applications on. So now if you go to the next page, this is a summary of the funding nationwide. So the tribal funding is now standing at $3 billion nationwide for tribes. out of that, I believe the NTIA has accepted grant applications already from tribes, and CSKT may have already made application. I'm not really sure about that, but
We have.
Okay.
well, anyway, they've received 5 billion in applications, so they're not going to fund everything that they've received, I suppose, but it seems to me like based on the demographics I looked at, that this Salish and Kootenai tribe may qualify for approximately 10 million in funding from this fund. And I believe the Connect Montana program, which is the state is administering, will end up with probably more than $470 million. And I believe we at Access Montana may qualify for more than 10 million in funding from that program. So if we can somehow find a way to collaborate, that would be a possible funding amount of probably over $20 million, which would go a long way toward funding very long-term infrastructure on the Flathead. Want to go to the next page, please? This is a kind of difficult map. It's better on the PowerPoint, but this shows the reservation boundary in yellow, and in red it shows the what's called the incumbent local exchange carrier boundary, study area boundary for Hot Springs and Ronan. On the western side of the reservation, you can see the red boundary around Camus Prairie and Little Bitterroot Valley. That's the Hot Springs service area. Ronan's historic service area is that slice of the Mission Valley around Pablo and Ronan. And then the other lines there are the legacy fiber optic cables that we had in place before 2009. We made a connection to Hot Springs up the Little Bitterroot Valley, and we also connected St. Ignatius and Polson. We worked very closely with the tribe to allow that network to consolidate and provide a single carrier for the Mission Valley operations of the tribe with that infrastructure. Okay, if you go to the next page, in 2010 that was the last time there was infrastructure funding from a somewhat crisis bill, the Obama stimulus bill. And Access Montana, with the support of both the Blackfeet and the Flathead tribe, applied and were successful in the only grant in Montana for middle mile facilities. And if you see the blue line on that map, it extended our network from St. Ignatius south to Missoula, and in several places in Missoula. We put another line up the east side of the Mission Valley to Ronan. And from the Pablo area, we went on the east shore to Kalispell and Whitefish. We did that in cooperation with the hospital network, the Health Information Exchange Montana, which is Kalispell Regional's group of rural hospitals. So the grant that we got was put in tandem with the grant that was received by this hospital group.
Actually,
And it funded this middle mile
and the
network.
grants, you should explain that the grants, neither one of the grants are big enough to do the job by itself, but by combining.
Can you use your mic, please?
Oh, sorry. By combining those grants, we were able to do a lot more than we would have been individually. And actually individually, they needed more money, and so did we, to do what we wanted to do, or to try to make the connection. And NTIA was really happy with us when Jay came up with the idea of combining, and the hospital was like, yay. So they were able to connect a lot of small hospitals that way.
That's correct. So the HIEM RTC collaboration was used to fund the Whitefish to Missoula section, and we shared the capacity on that middle mile facility. We also went from Pablo across Buffalo Bridge up to Elmo, over through the Big Draw and down through the Little Bitterroot to Camus Prairie, and that was a reliability loop to Hot Springs, and also serves the Elmo area. So with this network, we were able to provide the tribe with reservation-wide coverage for your operations, including Elmo, Arley, and Hot Springs, in addition to the operations here in the Mission Valley. This is a middle mile network, and it sets the stage for distribution, which is what we're working on now. If you go to the next page, and this is kind of hard to read, but you'll see in the central part of the Mission Valley, there are some green lines there. That's the distribution that we've built in the last 3 or 4 years, working on making fiber to the premise in our Ronan area. And I know Hot Springs is working on the same thing in their service territory. So that's kind of where our network stands right now, at least Ronan's part of the network. This does not show everything about Hot Springs network, but it does give a pretty good picture of what we've done on the Flathead Reservation. And the reservation is our focus. Next page. This is a snippet from Shelley's opinion piece that was put in the Missoulian at the end of November, and I've highlighted a portion of that piece. Access to high-speed internet for our community will mean better online learning and education opportunities. We know that knowledge is power, and that having basic access to high-speed internet should never be contingent on where you live or what income bracket you fall in. This is a good indication to me that the broadband goals of the tribes and our company are coinciding and are very, very similar. And it's my hope that we can work together to implement a long-term infrastructure here. It would be, I think the model that I'd like to use is a similar idea to what we were able to do with the hospital network, with the middle mile network. And I'm very interested in pursuing that. So that's basically the end of my presentation. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So I guess I'll just say, I know that you've been in conversations with Rick Enos, and he did let you know that we did apply for our own NTIA grant, and we have a long-term plan as well. And just for council to know that Rick expressed that the grant parameters made it hard to collaborate with service providers, but we're still continuing conversations about how we might be able to work together in the future. So with the CARES Act money, we were able to put up 4 towers so that we could increase our access for telework, telemedicine, and virtual learning. So, we're really looking forward to these infrastructure dollars as well. And we did receive notification from NTIA that they received so many applications and then compared to the amount that they had available, that they were gonna have to sift through them, and it wouldn't be until April until we got an answer if we had a successful application. So, but thank you for the information. Anita?
I guess my question, and I know that I've asked our IT department as well, but what about that last mile? That seems to be the biggest issue. And I know that I'm through Blackfoot down in Moise, but it's horrible. We just don't seem to get any better through the years, and I'm hoping that eventually one of the providers will pick up and go that last mile.
Well, that is what we are working on now for the central part of the valley and also in some other areas. One of my concerns is that, and this is somewhat of a problem for our company. We need to have a sustainable system. In other words, whatever infrastructure is built, it has to be not only funded to be constructed, it has to be funded to be maintained over the long term. One of the things we're looking at is trying to expand the distribution that we build in order to provide revenues that in relatively densely populated areas like the lakeshore or flooded lake, to provide revenues to fund less densely populated areas like the Big Draw and Elmo area, some of the rural areas. Certainly, there's pretty sparsely populated rural areas on the western flank of the reservation, and also, you know, in the Mission Valley here. And it is possible to provide a fairly robust system using a combination of both fiber distribution and wireless distribution. So the tribe's network of towers could be a resource to serve places that would be difficult to serve with fiber to the premise.
Jim? Or James?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, just a comment, you know, this is another example where the tribe has, what the tribe does benefits everyone on the reservation. And, you know, working with Ronan Telephone, you know, back 10 years ago or so, you know, putting in the fiber optic lines and such, that doesn't just benefit all of us tribal folks, but it benefits everyone on the reservation, even those that are often our opponents that live on this reservation. And so, you know, Mission Valley Power, we manage that. The low cost power there benefits all of the people on the reservation, whether they agree with this or not. And I think, you know, and this is just another example of that. Thank you.
I absolutely agree with that. An example of that is the Charter Corporation, which most people know as Spectrum. They're the cable TV operator in Pablo and Ronan and Polson. But they utilize our system to connect Missoula to both Polson and Kalispell. So in essence, we operate as a carrier's carrier. If you get your service from Spectrum in the town sites here, it rides on our system upstream. That was a requirement that we had to fulfill for the previous grant. I don't think it's quite clear what the criteria is going to be for this coming round, particularly at the state level. But I know at the state level, they're trying to craft their rules so that when they do fund infrastructure, that it has a long-term impact. And fiber to the premise for most applications is the best long-term investment. It is difficult to make that happen everywhere. And I think Anita mentioned that, you know, the southern part of the reservation is basically the ILEC there is Blackfoot.
Okay. James, can you hear us now?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear you now. I can.
Okay. So then Hot Springs has also been upgrading the last mile in the town of Hot Springs to migrate from copper to fiber. We have the northwest quadrant of the city built out and are in the process of switching over the customers. And then the next section, which is the northeast section, we will actually have fiber purposely pulled right there at the old bathhouse, so that if the tribe wishes to at any point in the future do any development there, we want to make sure that Hot Springs is ready to partner with you to provide any any bandwidth or any voice or data services needs at that location. And then with the speed increases, it became obvious that there were some areas in our survey territory that are not able to receive those higher speeds. This is significantly like out in Camus Prairie, in our more rural areas. And these areas where it's sometimes a mile between homes are, as Jay had mentioned, very cost prohibitive to be able to do fiber. Fiber optic takes about $60,000 a mile to install. And, but my plans for this upcoming year are to place a few additional small towers or large poles to extend our wireless. So we have fixed wireless service. It's not like cellular. But we have set of antennas that can connect to multiple homes. And then the home, we put a small dish with a antenna that then brings the internet into it. We can give speeds of up to 100 meg fairly easily over this thing. And my goal is to search for packets, especially of tribal customers who are being underserved, so that we can improve their services. Because, you know, the goal of Hot Springs is to partner with the tribe, because, you know, we are here on your reservation, serving you. Again, thank you for your time. And if I could, I would like to, leave my business cards with one of you, so that if there's anything that comes up during the year, please feel free to reach out to me. Because again, the Hot Springs Telephone would love to, do any partnering that we can to help, with any of the developments for the tribe.
Okay, so Chuck Reese is our lead on that. So if you leave your card with Jennifer, she can get it to Chuck. So
That sounds good. Thank you.
all right, thank you, everyone.
If I could, I'd like to mention one other thing. In the last year, there's been a fairly significant development on the Blackfeet Reservation. I'm sure that you may have heard of it. Through SAI, their economic development group, they have purchased the Browning Exchange from Three Rivers Telephone Cooperative, which has been their ILEC for, I guess,
Years.
yeah, decades, I guess. So now Montana has its first tribal ILEC telephone company on the Blackfeet. We just recently made a transaction with their telephone company to sell our fiber, our middle mile fiber assets on the Blackfeet to that company. So we are no longer providing any services on the Blackfeet. But this is Montana's first tribal telephone company. Of course, the Blackfeet is quite a bit different market and reservation than the Flathead. It is comprised of practically probably 90% of the population there is either members or descendants of the Blackfeet tribe. Here, we have a much more diverse population. The tribal population is a fairly, 20% of the total at the most, probably. So we have a lot different situation here than there, but I think there are opportunities for the tribe and private enterprise like Ronan and Hot Springs to partner with the tribe and to essentially have a goal of creating a Mission Valley Power type internet system here. And that's what I am hoping to try to work toward.
Yeah, kudos to the Blackfeet. I know they worked with Turtle Island Communications, Madonna and Mel Yawaki, who've also presented their information to this council as well. Yeah, Blackfeet's doing some really great things. They have their own public works department. So they've, assumed like the landfill, garbage disposal, all of that kind of thing. So we could learn from some of their infrastructure efforts. So kudos to the Blackfeet Nation.
They also operate the water system in Browning too.
Yeah, I guess I want to put my 2 bits in here. With all this opportunity for funding that the private companies have with the state and the tribe has with NTIA, I think it's a real opportunity, to work together and think of the people on the end, the people that we're serving. Think of them, rather than a power structure of a monopoly or something like. I hope that we could work together, work out an agreement where both parties, gain from the partnership. And I also think down the road, Jay is not going to live forever. And I think this is going to be a wonderful opportunity for the tribe to, you know, make offers and work in a partnership that would grow where maybe the tribe could acquire that telephone system. So I think you really need to, you know, be open and let Jay know what's really on your mind and what you want to do, and work together on this.
Thank you, Joe.
I am open to discussing that sort of thing. My career plan right now is in the 5 to 7 year time frame to try to build out to complete the infrastructure in the central part of the valley, and I'm hoping to try to particularly serve the west shore of Flathead Lake with better service. That there's I think if Blackfoot service is not satisfactory like to you, Anita, you'll find that along the lake shore the service is even worse, much worse actually. And the advantage to that is that you know, that the lake shore is basically subdivided into 100-foot lots. So every 100 feet, there's another dock, another house. They're not occupied all year, many of them, but those people can afford good service, most of them, and they want better service. So I think that's an opportunity to serve a market that can then help fund some of these more difficult areas that are more costly to serve.
Anita?
Just real quickly, and one of the other frustrations, and I'm sure that other homeowners are the same, is trying to combine services. You know, we're paying for internet, you're paying for the telephone, you're paying for the TV. I mean, it'd be nice to have a, you know, something that people can afford, because that will all hook in together like in towns. Because it's pretty expensive for people, and it just keeps going up and up and up with you mentioned Spectrum, and dish services and direct just keep going higher, and it seems like other people are able to combine them, and it's not so expensive, and I think that would sure help at some point, having all services connect.
I think that's a very good point, Anita. There are opportunities, I think, for bundling services. I think that the time of traditional cable or satellite TV is kind of coming to an end. If you have good internet service, you can essentially replace that with cheaper alternatives. You know, another fairly expensive process is having a cell phone, and those are national companies that provide those services. There are resale companies that provide cheaper cell phone service on the same networks as well. Part of the funding criteria for these new funding proposals is to try to structure discounts for low-income people. And I don't think that's been very well defined yet, but that is a goal of these funding programs. So I think there are opportunities to be creative in how these services are priced. There has been, at least over time, special discount programs for Indian country, and we've tried to utilize those as much as possible. The FCC they've had some problems nationwide with fraud in those programs, and they've created some safeguard systems. But I think that's something that really should be considered, is how to serve all of the population here, including those that don't have huge incomes.
Carol, did you have something?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was just curious, just a question of if, we were to go into a partnership, I'm curious about the infrastructure and how, if you sold or what would happen if we entered into a partnership and we decided to buy it or you sold it to somebody else, then what would happen to that asset as a partner? Would we own it or would you own it, or how would that all work?
Well, if we do enter into some kind of a partnership, I'm sure part of that would restrict my ability not to sell it off the reservation.
We don't want to sell it off.
I don't really,
But
it's never been my desire to cash out of this thing with a huge amount of money. My needs aren't that great, but I do think that creating a system that, as Joe alluded to, is sustainable and locally owned is very much a part of my goals long-term. That's what we have now, and I'd like to see that continue beyond my career if possible. So I don't really want to go into a partnership with the tribe and then sell the rest of it off the reservation. That's not my goal.
Okay, well, I'm just making sure because sometimes things happen and I don't even know how that whole thing would work, because if we're in a partnership, it seems like that would be decided before something was to happen, I would think. And
That's a real concern, Carol, and I think that in whatever discussions we have to resolve any concerns on that point on both sides of the table.
And I don't like the idea of having to use, we're using tribal set-asides by the federal government, correct? And then we end up having to buy it back. It just doesn't, so I'm just checking.
I
don't
can
know.
understand that concern, certainly.
And I just wanted to say, I understand Anita's talking about all the different things. Right now where we live, which is east of Nine Pipe Lodge, we have Blackfoot for our phone service. We have our internet service wirelessly, and we have Dish TV. So we're paying 3 bills that, I get it. We would like to have one service, but so far we can't even pull that off quite yet.
Then you get ESPN Plus and you got one more.
Okay,
I can say this, I've known Jay since he was in high school, and I know his dedication to the tribe, and it really is very heartfelt. And I know that he would do whatever he can to make sure, Carol, that those things are taken care of if you should enter into any kind of a partnership.
An exit plan because we have 5 boys between us and none of them are interested in going into the telephone business because it's difficult. So
I think another concern that I have here on the Flathead is that unlike the Blackfeet, where the tribe really is the community over there, the tribe is a huge part of this community, but it's certainly not, that there's many other, we have 30,000 people on the Flathead Reservation and 26,000, I guess. And there are many more alternatives for service here than there are, say, on the Blackfeet. So whatever arrangement that is made, or partnership or buyout or whatever, one of my concerns is to now this is not like Mission Valley Power. It's not going to be a monopoly. That you have to compete for customers, and we have to address sustainability and also the possibility that many people might resist buying service from a tribal entity if there's other alternatives available. Now, if you have the best infrastructure and your pricing is good, and that's going to make a big difference. But I also think it has to be seen as something that serves the whole community and not just the tribe. And I think that's going to be a kind of a difficult challenge, frankly, from my perspective.
James, did you have something?
Yeah, excuse me. I just want to say I thank Jay and the family there for, being willing to work with the tribes for a number of years. And I know Jay's been on the SKC Foundation board. I'm not sure if you're still on that, but, so him and his family have invested themselves into, helping the tribes, helping the education of our community people. And I think it's, the one thing we are definitely a minority on our own reservation, unfortunately, but we are definitely the economic powerhouse on the reservation. And so with the conservative Republicans in charge of our state government, we need to look back to Mickey Pablo days when we had, John Mercer in the House, Speaker of the House, and we use that economic power to influence legislation in Helena, and so I think with the Republican control of the state for the foreseeable future, we need to be mindful that when you're dealing with Republicans, they only care about it, pretty much the dollar, economic impact. And that's the way we've influenced the Republicans in Helena in the past. And, we look back to Mickey Pablo days for an example of how that was accomplished. So anyway, thank you, Jay, for being willing to work with the tribes and talk with the tribes. And I think that's admirable. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Well,
So
I want to
we are-
thank the council as well.
So Chuck Reese is here. If you guys want to make an appointment to speak together, he is the lead on this broadband project for us. So he's here to be able to make an appointment with you. So thank you for your
Yeah,
presentation.
we've
today.
worked with Chuck for a long time.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much and have a great day.
You too. Drive safe out there. So we'll take a 5-minute break before tribal education.
Carol, can you hear me? This is Jessica Johnson.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, just doing an audio check. Thank you.
Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Next up, we have the Ronan School Annual Report. Michelle, did you want to introduce them?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair and rest of the council. Thank you so much for having us this morning. I'd like to start by introducing the Superintendent of Ronan Schools, Mark Johnston. Thank you.
Mark, you're muted. Mark, you're muted.
There we go.
Go ahead.
I am now unmuted. So I'd like to start off by saying right now things are, I feel, really going well in the Ronan School District. I feel the way that we've structured our Indian Ed position has been a huge benefit for our students. We've retained Jessica Johnson, who is the vice principal of the high school, to serve as the administrative link to our Indian Education Department. She oversees the grant, and she also ensures that our IPPs, which is our Indian procedures and policies, are being updated and followed. We then hired Eva Green to serve as our Indian Education Director. Eva does a great job establishing connection with our Native American students and also gives them a safe place where they can hang out if necessary. She monitors their grades, their attendance, and makes parent contact when necessary. We then, which I thought was a very good idea, we then created building level Indian education for all educators at each building. So Eva actually is the representative for the high school. Alina Graves, a teacher from the middle school, is the rep there. PE teacher Dusty Smith does K. William Harvey, and Pablo teacher Sonny Sifford does that. So what's been nice about that is they're able to be a positive contact for all the teachers where they can come if they have questions on Indian Ed for All materials or ways to improve the instruction in our classrooms. So that's been good. One of the biggest challenges we have faced, as most districts was creating a plan of safe return for our students. And we have put, I think, some pretty good practices in place, and it's really helped keep the number of positive COVID cases we have down. In the past 2 months, we've only had 22 positive cases out of 1,750 staff and students, which is only about 1.2% 2%. In the last month, if you look at just the last month, we've had 0, 0, 4, and 1 this past week. All of our results are updated each week by our principals at each building, and then the spreadsheet is shared on our district website for anybody to see. And the last thing before I turn it over to Jessica is our district has been very fortunate this past year, and we've received about $11 million in ESSER funds. And from that, we've been able to add many services and people to help all of our students. We're also able to make some facility upgrades on things like our heating at the high school that probably wouldn't have been able to do without these funds. And one project that we're looking at, because of these ESSER funds, is we're looking at ways to improve our career center. And anybody in education knows that not all students plan on going to college. And because of that, we have to do a better job at the career technical education classes. Right now, we currently have a woods teacher. We have a metals teacher who also does ag science. We have FCCLA, which is home ec, and we do some computer classes where he has different technology in there to help kids in that area. But I think we can do more. One thing we've talked about is, and when we started to look at, is we're looking at other programs, other schools around the state that have had successful, what are called CTE, career and technical education programs. And we're looking to figure out what pieces would best fit our school. So far, we've taken about 1.5 million and we're upgrading our career center. We're making some positive changes to make that place a little bit better. But we also know if we want to expand into areas, let's say like the automotive, we're looking at maybe expand in electronics and some other ideas. We might have to do a little bit of building. So we're looking at that. And we also need to spend a little bit more money on upgrading the current things we have in place. So with that being said, I think we're really working hard at trying to increase what we have to offer for our students. I know I've talked a little bit with Carol. I've also reached out to Rob McDonald and talked with Rob. He says that the CTE, the career and technical, is really is a direction that the tribe is interested in pursuing. So I'm excited to get that on the ground and really make that a worthy program for our students. So I guess, does anybody have any questions for me?
Anita?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Mark, one thing I'd like to comment on is you do have the only FFA program here on the reservation in the schools. I think it's very important to continue with our agricultural, being that we are mainly ag. So I think that's been a real plus as well for the Ronan school. I wish that we could expand it into the other high schools, but over the years that's been lost. So I am glad that Ronan is still continuing to provide that. Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. And what's kind of neat about that is we have a great FFA. He's also our ag teacher. He, and a lot of you guys probably see in the paper, he received a big grant, or not a grant, he received some money. Part of it goes into his own pocket. And I think, and Jessica can clear it up when she gets the mic, but it was like 15,000 just for himself. And then another 30-some thousand that he's working on to fix up the stockyards that the kids use. And what he plans on doing, according to him, is a lot of kids don't have the place to put their animals and stuff. So by making that a better facility, kids who don't necessarily have a farm or a ranch to do that stuff, they're going to be able to do it. So I'm pretty excited about that.
So I know we only have a half an hour here, but there were three things that stood out to me in this report. The first one was what I am interpreting as a lack of Alta care in the elementary and middle school. It says NA on your chart. Do you only have Alta care teams in the high school?
We have no Alta care, Shelley. What happened was Alta care couldn't get any therapists. When I came to Ronan, Alta care had, I think we had 2 programs at Pablo. We had 2 at the K. William Harvey. We had 2 at the high school and we had 2 at the middle school. By the end of last year, we were down to 1 program at the high school and 1 program at the middle school that only had 1 person in each place. So that's kind of went away. One of the challenges has been in the recent legislative session, they took away the way that CTE is funded. And what they did is they put the onus back on the school districts where now we have to come up with a 35% match on. So when the provider comes in, they bill us, we pay them, we submit to the state, then they give us about 65 cents on the dollar. So until they get that part figured out a little bit better, we don't have those services. What we are very fortunate is the one reason Alta Care can't find any people is that almost all of them go into private practice because it's a lot more financially positive for them. So we do have lots of therapists who come to our schools and work with our students. We've been actually able to hire another counselor. So now we have 3 counselors at 3 at the middle school and high school together. So 1.5 at each of those schools. So yeah, we definitely would love to see some more mental health. We know that's a big piece of what we do, but it's really sad right now what happened in the last legislative session.
Okay, the other concern I had was on page 24 of your report. It's 27 in our packet, where it has the discipline summary. And given the, I guess, percentage of Native students compared to non-Native, you have twice as many Native discipline incidents.
Yeah, and that's pretty easy to look at. Right now, our school district is closer to 80% Native American. So it would make sense that if you had, let's say in our school district, most of our disciplines happen at the, as you can see, most of the disciplines happen at the middle school and high school. So even though it looks like there might be twice as many, there's about 3/4 to 1/4 Native American students to non-Native American students.
Okay, and the last item I had was how many Native teachers do you have that may have come to you from either Salish Kootenai College or another education program?
You know, I know in the last years, we've done a very good job at hiring. The one thing I think that we do here at Ronan is we try to be fairly exclusive on the student teachers we take. You know, U of M has teachers, Western Montana College has teachers, and there's lots of others out there. We try to mainly get our student teachers, especially in elementary or in the fields where SKC has programs. We have tried to work with Doug Ruman at the college and try to keep those spots exclusively for them. So what's nice about that is we actually get to work with those teachers for, let's say, 4 months, and we get to see, you know, how they're doing, maybe work with them to improve them. And it really helps with our hiring. And because of that, I know we've hired a lot of teachers, especially recently at the elementary level, because of our relationship with SKC. So as far as giving you the exact numbers, I'm not sure. We had a meeting with our IEC, and one of our teachers Sunny Sifford, who's on that committee, she actually stated that a lot of teachers, they're not even recognized as being Native American, whether they're descent or whatever. And she said the number is probably a lot more than we actually know up front. So in general, we're going to keep working with SKC. We're going to keep working to develop strong Native American teachers, and we're going to do our part to hire them.
Okay, that is something that we specifically had requested in the past few years from all the reservation schools. James, did you have something? And then Anita?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, it was interesting to read that the school superintendents, the AA schools, expressed their no confidence in the state superintendent in the Office of Public Instruction. And I'm kind of curious as to if there's rumblings in Class B and C schools, A's maybe, as to what their feeling is in terms of the Elsie Arnson, the superintendent. And it's a little concerning when, we see some of the schools in the state that, they have Native populations in those schools, and those superintendents feel strongly enough to come together and express their disapproval, and the state superintendent in her office. And I was kind of curious if you'd be willing to share anything on that, or to put you on a spot in that regard, or.
Nope, that's a good, valid question. So as part of Western Mass, which is the Western Montana Superintendents, we got together and we knew that the AAs were going to do that. We were all for it. The AAs, and you read that in the letter, that they're about 50, they educate about 50% of all students in the state of Montana. So they had probably the strongest voice to come out. We've actually reached out through our school administrators in Montana and the Montana School Board Associations, all reaching out to Elsie, letting her know that we disapprove of the way that she is handling the position. There's no way to say that it's not politically motivated. As far as I'm concerned, I'm totally disgusted. One thing I talked about at our last Western Mass meeting was I would love to find a way to make that position a nonpartisan position, much like judges, et cetera. There's no place in education for politics. And it frustrates me when those things happen. And I was told by the school administrator Montana lead that what makes it difficult is that the state superintendent, and I didn't know this, is one of 5 members on the state land board as a voting member, and that they didn't feel that he didn't feel that the Republican Party would be willing to give up a position that they are currently holding. So again, I'm super frustrated that anything that deals with educating our students has anything to do with politics. And I'm going to keep, I've reached out to Elsie, given her my 2 cents, but again, you never get any responses back. And I think just because the AA did release theirs to the press, that's how they did it. I do think it does speak volumes on our frustration.
I appreciate your candor and your response. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Anita?
Just real quickly, excuse me, looking over some of the scores, and I know that there was some concern by the teachers over what the pandemic has caused. I'm just wondering if the schools got an opinion about if the students are actually that 1.5 years behind, and what they're doing to catch these kids up. Now is this looking at the percentages? Thank
Mark,
you.
do you
Go
want
ahead.
me to share
Yes.
anything?
Yeah, go ahead. You can take this one.
So this one is one thing that we talked a lot about in our Title VI committee as well. our Title VI Parent Committee set goals. We're in a 4-year grant cycle. And so when we set goals, increase cultural identity and awareness, STEM, college and career pathways, as well as at-risk student supports. And this was really a big point of the discussion that we had in regards to the effects that the last few years have had on our students, all the way from elementary up through high school. I can speak more about the high school end of things, but I know that it's something that all of our schools are working on. We have, for example, last year we had about 40 freshmen out of a class of about 100. They have to earn 6 credits to become officially a sophomore. We had about 40 students that did not meet that criteria. And so on top of the very large freshman class that came in, which was for us, on average, we've been around 330 to 350. And this freshman class bumped us up to about 370. So on top of that class of about 120, 25, 30 kids, we had an extra 40 just in the freshman class that had missed credits. And many of them, over half of them, were students that either had transferred into Ronan from a different school because they were only offering remote learning and that wasn't going well, or they were students that were doing the remote learning part on our end and that wasn't going well. Or there's a variety of students that have come in that just literally haven't been in school for the past year. They may not have been enrolled, they may have been moving, a lot of different factors going on. And so luckily at Ronan, we have some things that we've been working with at the high school. And I know that the other schools are also doing things in regards to trying to help some of those younger kids obtain the skills to move forward. But we have, been able to, like Mr. Johnston said, not only offer in the extra services of another school counselor, which has been huge, and not only meeting the social emotional needs of our students, but also the creativity and brainstorming it takes for every single student that needs to get caught up, because they might have jobs, they might be in sports, they might have different things that they're part of. So their schedules and how we can set them up, we have to be a little creative. We have some online credit recovery. We offer 2 sessions of our summer school program where the kids come in and can earn back some of those credits. We have lunch study hall where students are attending those to work on different things, as well as during the day, we have some other resources that we try to work around. But it is something that is out of focus of how we're going to get some of these kiddos caught up in credits, but also in the skills that maybe they've missed out in the past year.
So just to stop you for 1 sec, the one thing we've looked at really at the elementary is we understand trying to get individual help is super important. So one thing we were able to do with the ESSER funds is we brought in about 3 to 4 extra paraprofessionals at each one of those elementary buildings, plus more para support at the middle school and more para support at the high school. So through the ESSER funds, we really have been able to allocate more funds to making sure that we do address the learning loss. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, Carol has something.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say, along with Shelley, I'm also concerned that Alta Care had left the school, and I understand you explained why and everything, and just the mental health of students and social media and the impact it has on kids. I just really worried about that. And then also I'm, along with Anita, I have a grandson who participated in FFA and got the bronze at, I believe, a bronze at national. So yeah, I was really proud of that, and really proud that we're the school that has it within the system. The other thing I took a look at the attendance record, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And I know you guys work hard at getting kids to school, and I'm not sure how you correct that, but it'd sure be nice if we get those numbers in line. So yeah, I'm concerned. And then the last thing I want to mention is my grandson got a book that was sent home with him. And it was quite surprising. There was one Native American picture in this whole book. And I thought to myself, well, at first it really upset me And then I thought, well, should I be upset? And I'm just wondering, you know, I'm in the middle of an Indian reservation. I guess why? I don't know. And maybe I shouldn't be bringing it up here, but anyway, it really bothered me.
Carol, can I ask what content area that is? Is it a social studies or a science? I couldn't see the front.
Okay, it's a preschool. It's a K through or kindergarten.
One thing I can't speak specifically on that one, but one thing I can speak on is that we've been going through a lot of curriculum reviews lately, and one thing that we have put together is some various committees that are reviewing curriculum that include parents from the IEC, the Title VI, instructors from SKC, and teachers, where we are going through various, right now we're really focusing on English, or, you know, English language arts, because that it takes a long time to get those meetings together. And we are reviewing curriculum for what you're just talking about. You're right. It's hard to find a curriculum that has what we would consider quality IEFA content. What we've taken through the committee, what we've decided is we go through and we vet for things that are missing, things that we need to get rid of, they're not appropriate, and things that we can keep as teachable pieces in regards to IEFA. And I will put that on our curriculum director's list to look at. But I can tell you that that is a process that we have started this year. We were going to start it last year, but with COVID, it made it very hard to get people together and to go through it. You know, it's a lot of sitting down and physically going through the curriculum. I can also mention, I know you're busy, but if you'd like to be part of those committees or discussions, then I can mention that to the curriculum director as well, because we're always looking for people that have the time and are willing to put their voice into the process. So,
Carol, just a quick question. Was it like a library book, or was it a?
It was a scholastic book, I believe, that was sent home. And if you look, there's one mention, it says down here in Oklahoma, it says Indian territory right here. And that's the only mention of Native American in the whole. It's a paperback, you know, so.
It looks more like a library book. Does it have like a?
It's not a library book. It was just sent home. And that's why I thought, well,
that's kind of goofy.
Why would they send it home unless I bought it through Scholastic? And I don't think I would buy this. I don't think I did.
Well, you know, I'm going to follow up on that because it is interesting. You know, we have to also be aware of what we send at home, what we're sending home.
Yeah,
so part of it is on us. Absolutely.
I thought I was wondering, well, you know, Mr. B doesn't really look native, so I don't know. I don't know. That's all I want to say. Thank you. I appreciate
All right.
your
Thank
report.
you, Carol.
can I add one thing really quickly? I know we only have a half an hour, but Carol brought up something that I think we were going to kind of discuss a little today, was the attendance issues. And, you know, we've been at the high school, and I know the middle school is looking at it, been utilizing the early warning system through OPI, which is basically a statistical model that takes students' data and then flags for any risk factors in regards to graduating high school. And that's based on like grades, behavior, attendance, mobility, and whether they're, you know, have been held back or they're lacking the age, you know, they're not in the common age bracket. And one of the things that comes up repeatedly in our meetings, we call them student assistant team meetings, is attendance. And oftentimes it's not the students necessarily their skill level that's the barrier to their success. It's just that they're not here. And through these meetings, you know, we've tried to have these conversations where we're also learning what are the struggles that parents are dealing with as well in regards to getting their kids to school. And at the high school level, a ton of parents have shared that during COVID, it was before that this might have been kind of a bad habit, but during COVID, when everybody was on quarantine, it became a really bad habit of their students staying up late on their phones, playing video games, you know, just not going to bed at a decent time. And that literally they are struggling to physically get their students out of bed in the morning and to school. And it's, come down to a point where, about weekly, we have parents call and say, can the school resource officer come out and help me try to get my student to school? And, maybe taking the technology away, but then they get a hold of it, or, but there seems to be, this kind of continuous discussion from parents on the physical struggles of getting their student to school. And that's really hard because, we can't show up and also physically make that student, or, and so trying to find other ways to connect to also get the students to want to come to school. But a lot of the students say once they're here, they like it, they just can't get out of bed in the morning. And so that's been a really big point of discussion.
Sounds like a parenting issue. I know when my students were in elementary, there was I was thinking after school group for parents. I think it was called the FAST program, families, something or other. But they would take the students and do an activity with them, and then parents would also have a session. So maybe that's something that the school could look into as well. And we do have about 5 more minutes.
I'd like to turn it over to Eva. Eva, is there anything that we missed that you'd like to share with the council?
Good morning, council. Thanks for having us today. Just to add on the IFA building reps, they're doing a great job, and that, like Mark said, that's a great asset to our district. And I do have a presentation. Oh, and then Carol, thanks for bringing that to our attention about that book. Our librarians work really hard to try to vet everything that goes through there. And if it came from the library, we missed that one. So, and I do have a presentation I would like to share real quick. So this is just, our Title VI committee, we have Dan Derglo, Cleo Camus, and Donna Catholiking. They're all have a wealth of knowledge on Indian education and very resourceful to us. And then our goals, Jessica went over these: at-risk student support, increased cultural awareness and identity, and increased student engagement with college, career readiness, and pathways. And Jessica went over some of these. These are some of the supports we have for at-risk students. And to me, I think, just building the relationships with our students is the biggest. And myself and our staff work very hard at trying to do that. For cultural awareness, we have guest speakers all the time. We have our Native American Club. We communicate with the culture committees, Kootenai and Salish Police Bay, and just try to communicate with everybody to get things done.
Eva, who is your Salish language teacher?
We don't have a Salish language teacher. We're in the process of obtaining one, and the schedules didn't work out. Like in the elementary schools, they have a really intensive reading block in the morning, and our Salish teacher was only available in the morning, and it just wasn't gonna work out for that. But we do have in the classrooms, the Salish language app, and then they play the native games online, which helps with the language. So it's not missing from our district. It's just not a physical teacher here, but we are working on it. These are just photos of like a mentoring we have going on between the high school and the middle school for at-risk students. Some things we have in the school here. This is in the high school. This was just done, and we have more of this going to happen here shortly. Cameron Decker did that. Ronan School District respectfully acknowledges that we are in the traditional homeland of the Salish, Kootenai, and Calice Bay people. So from PR Day, in the high school, we had Heather Gray's class go gather cattails for cattail mats. And then this is Aspen Decker's Salish bags at the elementary level. That's just what we got from, well, part of what we got from PR Day. It was fun. Naomi Billadu came in and she does powwow sweat sessions with PE. Guest speakers, Francis Auld, Peyton, Alexander, Danica Lucky, Dental, Tribal, Game Warden, and our native plant garden. Yeah, just some things we have going on in our school. Do you guys have any questions?
Any questions from council?
Madam Chair, if I may say
Go ahead,
something real
James.
quick. Yeah, thank you. You know, the relationship with the schools on the reservation and the tribes have come through court battles over racism. And it's nice to see that we're down the road. We don't have everything the way we would like, but we're at least down the road to where we're not in court battling with the school districts over a variety of things. And so, you know, those things have come, these relationships have come through court battles and battles that just about all of us on the council have been a part of. And, you know, I grew up in our Lee school system, and, you know, we had our various things of racism and closet racism there as well. So it's good to see where we're at. But remember, these relationships were developed out of very vigorous battles. And so it's good to see we're on, you know, somewhat down the road from that.
And just to add to that, I think the one thing that's very positive is working with Michelle has been awesome. Miranda does an awesome job also. So they really have done a great job working with us. And in return, I think we have developed a strong relationship with them. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have Seth Makepeace and Rhonda Sweeney.
What brought this about? Is this because of the thing in Arlie, the site, or are we just having a discussion about the groundwater?
Good morning, Madam Chair, council members. This is Seth Makepeace. I'm checking to see if you can see the screen that I'm sharing with you.
Yes, we can see it.
Very good. I'm not, I hope Rhonda's on. I don't know for sure at this moment. I'm coming in remotely. Thank you for your time this morning. Excuse me. Yeah.
Rhonda's on as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your time this morning. We had meant to get this presentation into you earlier. What we'd like to speak to you about today is the unitary management ordinance as it relates to groundwater issues. I'm apologetic that I didn't get this presentation to you earlier. I actually just put it together at the end of the day yesterday and this morning, but Jennifer has it and it's available to you. So I have a short number of slides. They're sort of busy, 12 slides I'd like to go through. And then I'd like to, open it up to questions for yourselves and for Rhonda to participate in that. The unitary management ordinance is going to be a very, very significant undertaking for the tribes in the state of Montana. You moving from so many significant issues, you just come from the education, and now we're moving right to a very, very big water issue. So what I'd like to do in this is very briefly go through a couple of existing graphics so that we just think about groundwater. I'm restricting the conversation to groundwater. Then we'll look at certain elements of the unitary management ordinance. I put 2 web pathways down there. The first one is a very detailed review of groundwater on the reservation. The second one is the unitary management ordinance. So I think we all understand why groundwater is important, but very quickly, this is a map that shows our understanding of domestic wells as they currently stand on the reservation. There are approximately 10,000 domestic wells along the Highway 93 corridor. They often exceed 100 wells per section of land, so 640 acres. So this is a graphic from the summary on the website. So domestic wells, very important source of groundwater use. These are community wells. And so community wells are defined in the Safe Drinking Water Act. So for example, there are 85 community water systems on the reservation, 38 of which are tribal and 47 are non-tribal. So that would include the city of Polson or the Turtle Lake tribal home site community water system, but it also includes private water companies, which there are more than one would think. There are subdivisions that are community water systems. And then it also includes the schools and places where people go to drink water and they're there for a short period of time, schools, restaurants, churches. So these are regulated groundwater systems on the reservation, and we have a very good sense of those also. The third slide is where groundwater is an integral part of the surface water budget. So they're completely interconnected. And just to briefly explain this slide, in the Jocko River, and it could be applied to Post Creek or Sabine Creek or other streams, but I just use this as an example. The Jocko River from Highway 93 to Ravalli gains groundwater, and you can visualize it in that air photo picture. That groundwater gain is just critical for the river environment, for the flow, for the water quality and temperatures, for the habitat, for plant and animal life. And I really want you to understand the volumes there. So if you were to drive from Arlee to Seeley Lake and you look at Upper and Jocko, Lower Jocko lakes, Black Lake and Lower Jocko Lake, when they're completely full right to the brim, that's about 11.5 thousand acre feet of water, 1 acre, 1 foot deep. The groundwater gain from Highway 93 to Ravalli is more than double that per year. So it's really a large volume of water. It's and Post Creek is even larger, frankly. So it's groundwater and surface water's role of interconnecting to support each other is very prevalent in the prevalent issue in the unitary management ordinance. So just wanted to really emphasize that we have some understanding of the groundwater resources on the reservation, and we always work from the perspective that they are interconnected with surface water resources. So a final one is the Camus and Camp Aqua geothermal areas. This is a little bit older. I was asked to do a study of those areas a few years ago, but these are unique resources on the reservation, and one can see the core Camus geothermal area, the warm water area, the Camp Aqua area. And so just another example of, the really critical nature of groundwater. And so The reason I highlight groundwater is that the unitary management ordinance will likely deal with groundwater much more than surface water and new permitting. So the UMO is unitary in the sense that water is a unitary hydrologic resource. And so we blur that distinction between surface and groundwater. And, you know, that is really embedded in the UMO, and it's one of the positive elements of that. The other thing I think that's going to be very important going forward and is that the enactment and effectuation of the UMO is shared jurisdiction between the tribes and the state. And so it's really, when Rhonda maybe speaks to you about the water rights settlement is in a glass house, this really is where the rubber meets the road, that the tribes have placed themselves under the same permitting responsibilities for new developments as state water uses, you know, fee land, non-member water uses. And so the process will be, you know, closely watched, I would anticipate. The UMO provides for new appropriations of water. An appropriation is really the application for and then the successful acquiring of a water rights permit. It allows for changes of use in water rights, and I'll talk more about that. And it allows for mechanisms to enforce existing and new water rights. And it's important to understand that all three of these things there's been a void for decades on all three of these things. And it's allowed a little bit of a Wild West environment out there with water use. And so the UMO will kind of, it has other things it addresses, but it really tackles these three things in primary responsibility. So here, you don't need to focus on the text, but there are two types of appropriation rights allowed with the Unitary Management Ordinance. Appropriation rights that'll be more streamlined and move through the system more quickly, where mitigation to offset adverse effects to existing water rights is not required. And the next slide, I'll dig a little deeper on that. So replacement wells. So for example, if the community of Charlotte had one of their community wells go down for some reason, that they could replace that well. Domestic allowances are the same thing as domestic wells. They are intended to move right through the process with an allowance of 35 gallons a minute up to 2.4 acre feet per year. The same with stock water. And then unique for the tribes, their flathead system compact water does not require mitigation and adverse effects analysis. So the tribes, tribal members and lessees have access to that water if the tribes direct themselves that way. Wetland water rights is another area where we've embedded the ability to protect existing wetlands. And then there's a suite of other uses. So I want to be careful with your time. There are hydropower and other uses. I personally would anticipate the UMO will see a large number of applications for domestic wells and changes of water use. And I'll talk about changes in the future. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the UMO sees 10 to 15 domestic wells a month come across their desk, whatever schedule they deal with. But that's kind of the rate of drilling that we're seeing is greater than 10 wells per month on the reservation. So
Seth,
that's
Anita
the
has a
first
question.
cap. Excuse me, yes.
Anita has a question. Go ahead, Anita.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Seth. Before I forget, when you're talking about the flathead system compact water, it says only available to tribes, tribal members and leasees. So that isn't attached to trust property, is it?
It does not have to just be attached to trust property. No.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say, because a lot of tribal members do have fees. So, all right, thank you, Seth.
Yeah.
I didn't want to forget that question.
Sure. Yeah, this is a lot to get you through. I assume your legal technical team will want to interact with you on other occasions with this. I recognize it's a lot to get through, but so the first category of appropriation rights are streamlined in the sense that they don't require this analysis of adverse effects. The second category of allowable appropriation or water right permits are where mitigation to offset adverse effects to existing water rights may be required. And that's a UMO board and technical staff decision. And so mitigation means that the example at the bottom is, suppose someone comes in with an application to drill an irrigation well between Ronan and Pablo, and the UMO staff and the board determine that it will adversely affect the spring discharge in Ronan Spring Creek, which flows right through town. And that's not improbable at all. That's why I use that example. That development would have to offset any adverse effect to the tribe's in-stream flow or other uses in Ronan Spring Creek. And they would have to offset it both in the amount of water, the timing that it influences those existing water rights, and the location where it occurs. And they would have to develop a mitigation plan. As you can imagine, the reservation is fully appropriated for water uses. It's going to be, I think, very hard to develop new, larger uses of water, because unless the tribes are doing the development, they will, people really won't have access to mitigation water. So the tribes likely may in certain circumstances, but it's going to be difficult. So this is the other category of appropriation rights that are allowed, and it doesn't define the purpose of those rights. It defines that they will have to mitigate their adverse impacts. The other big category, and this is really one of the biggest areas of water use, water permitting in the state of Montana off the reservation, is changes of uses. It's kind of for example, in Utah, on the Wasatch Front by Salt Lake City, the phrase is buy and dry. They buy irrigation water rights and they rededicate them to subdivision development. They're changing the water use, buy and dry, drying up the farm fields so they can grow houses. I would expect changes of uses to occur on the reservation, and it might be something the tribes want to aggressively pursue. And so as the tribes have been acquiring land over the numerous decades, they have been acquiring a large number of water rights. Over 1,800 statements of claim, which are typically senior water rights, pre-1973 water rights. The tribes own those. They're sitting on that valuable collection of claims. And the tribes may want to change the uses of some of those water rights. For example, in the lower Bitterroot, Little Bitterroot, the tribes have purchased a ranch with the senior water rights in the lower Little Bitterroot River. They have an irrigation purpose. Perhaps the tribes would want to change the purpose of that water right from consumptive water to non-consumptive water to support in-stream flow or wetlands. That would be a tribal decision, of course. Maybe they want to go the other way and try to change a water right for another purpose. But changes of use could be a very powerful tool for the tribes to sort of reach certain objectives. And the UMO allows for that to occur. And the tribes really should be aware of this sort of body of claims that they've acquired with their land purchase. It's really quite a valuable set of water rights. So here's where we talk a little, I use the word considerations, but these are some of the tools at the tribe's disposal with the unitary management ordinance. The tribes, of course, have pervasive senior priority date water rights across the reservation. So the tribes will be in a position to watch developments or appropriation rights that require mitigation due to adverse effects. And they can they can watch that and the UMO staff and board and make sure that mitigation occurs to protect their sort of platform of water rights, both their statements of claim, their permits, and their water rights, settlement water rights. One of the other tools that the tribes have is that it's quite frustrating across the state, but individual domestic wells that come in, for example, the potential RLE development where they want to, permit as individual wells, it's very difficult to address that because the UMO is intended to streamline individual wells through permitting. So it's hard to address cumulative effects. So the UMO, the ordinance, has a tool called groundwater management areas. And they're a tool in the unitary ordinance to address cumulative effects, resources of special concern, such as a geothermal area, overuse of water if groundwater mining is occurring, or other issues such as impaired water quality. It's a tremendous tool that's built into the unitary ordinance. And the way it works is that you develop a scientifically or technically driven petition to the UMO board. And these are the groups that can petition to the board: the tribes, the state, the federal government, various public entities, or at least 1/3 of the water right holders in a proposed groundwater management area. So a petition could be submitted to the UMO staff and board. They have to review it, approve it, modify it, reject it, somehow condition it. And the outcome might be a temporary groundwater management area, a recommendation for further work, or a permanent groundwater management area. And the details are not defined because each area will have unique requirements. For example, if the tribe wanted to protect the geothermal resources in the Camus or area, they could petition for a groundwater management area. If the tribes wanted to see an area that's developing at a rapid rate and they'd like to get control so that it's at least under a community water system, they could petition for a groundwater management area and try to prevail with the UMO board. If groundwater mining is occurring, for example, there are a few areas where use of groundwater is exceeding recharge. Lone Pine, Sunny Slope are two areas. The tribes may seek a petition to try to control that groundwater overuse. And so that's a very powerful tool that the tribes have. I think there's one more slide, and then so potential outcomes that are spelled out in the unitary ordinance from a permanent groundwater management area is the area can be closed to new appropriations of water. Future development can be restricted with specific criteria defined for an area. You can prohibit or restrict stock water or domestic allowances. You can require measurement of all future uses, conservation practices. You can require mitigations. So these are some of the outcomes that could occur with a permanent groundwater management area. So this is really just, your legal team is probably presented to you on the UMO. It also is a way to address and is addressing registration of existing state and tribal uses. But going forward, the UMO will really be related to development of new appropriations. And these are some of the kind of the package of information, package of tools available to the tribes. So they have the groundwater management areas. They have their change of use tools available to them. And then they just have advocacy and protection of their existing senior water rights. Water rights outside, water rights permitting is I don't want to over dramatize, but it can be quite a battleground in the state of Montana, and it's really quite, think of the Gallatin Valley or the Bitterroot Valley. And And it really requires very robust technical work and really working in concert with a legal staff. And I think the UMO will, with the development pressures that the reservation is seeing, one could anticipate that they're going to really have a heightened profile going forward. So Rhonda and I are available to tackle any questions with the time remaining. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Seth. Council have any questions?
You, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, James.
Thank you. Just a quick question. You know, I've been asked by a few different tribal members with, you know, when it comes to registering the existing uses and groundwater uses, you know, we approved, I think, the advertisement for trust landowners and allottees to begin the process of registering their existing water use, ground use, I'm assuming. And, you know, so there's a lot of confusion as to that. You know, some folks are believing that when the tribe settled the water rights had included the individual allottees and individual trust landowners. And so I imagine, you know, and then the fractionization, if I'm saying it right, of all the different entities of land, tribal land on the reservation. You know, if a piece of land has 100 owners, who's responsible out of those 100 interest folks to file that? Do each one of those individual persons have to file a claim? That was one question. And then a little bit unrelated is I had a conversation with a couple of the irrigation project workers, and they're really concerned about, you know, what their jobs may or may not be, what their pay may or may not be. And so I don't know if there's a way that we can, I guess there was a meeting that you all held with them last August, and there seemed to be a little more questions come out of that than answers. And I don't know if there's a way to visit with those folks that work at the irrigation project and kind of give them a little bit clearer understanding of what the future may hold with those folks. But I guess those are my couple questions. One with the registering of the water uses on tribal lands and allotted lands, and then if there's any way we can visit with those folks at the irrigation project and maybe give them some reassurances what their jobs may or may not be, or income from those positions. Anyway, thank you.
Rhonda?
Go ahead, Rhonda. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. I just wanted to add on and then partially respond to Jim's questions, or Jim's, excuse me, the questions. And how this unitary management ordinance came about is a recognition that DNRC was issuing permits without knowing how much water was available on the reservation, and that they didn't ever ask the tribes if those additional appropriations were desired or influenced tribal water rights. And we went to court and said, you can't do that anymore. You need to slow down on the reservation and talk to us, and we need to have a say. Through those court battles and years of negotiations with the state, that's how the water management ordinance came about. And it does provide tools for the tribes to use in the future. It's important that you integrate those tools with the water resources program. And so we know or have a warning about when resources are being threatened or damaged. And Seth's program has traditionally done that, but I think it's even more important going forward. The Water Management Board will have 2 members appointed by the tribe, 2 appointed by the state of Montana, and a 5th elected by the other 4 members. So while we'll have a say, we won't have control. We'll have to work with the state of Montana's representatives, and we need to do it on a scientific basis so that we know what we're talking about. With respect to the Flathead Irrigation Project, we're always available to meet with them, but what you're doing are 2 things at one time right now. You're considering an agreement with the Flathead Irrigation District to set up or take over operation and management of the irrigation project. And that's a very ambitious schedule in the coming year. With the discussions we've had so far, we've gone back and forth, and we'll later present to you the latest version of that agreement, which is more of a utility organization, and will have less duties and responsibilities assigned to the board. More of those things have to be developed in the future. So while things are in flux, it is a little bit hard to talk to irrigation employees. I think the most important thing to say is that we're gonna try to get them all the tools and salary they need to continue their lifestyle. That's always our goal. But we don't have any specifics at this point in time. We are also considering requests from the Mission and Jocko districts to join this group. It's a little dicey, as you all know, because those irrigation districts don't generally favor the tribes, haven't in the past, and going forward, we want to make sure protections are in place so that our water rights are adequately protected, and that development by non-Indians doesn't exceed or doesn't impact those water rights we've identified that are included in the compact. And yes, all those allottees and tribal members will get part of the tribal water right. That's already in the compact. What we're doing the registration for is to identify and protect those rights into the future. For example, the allotment I grew up on has a spring that was developed by IHS, but that water right has never been filed. So that's what the purpose of the registration is. In terms of allotments that have a lot of undivided interests, we've already identified water rights for irrigated parcels. That's in the compact as well. And what we're trying to do is register those non-irrigation, domestic, stock water, and other uses that tribal members have developed over time. One of the big problems we're going to have to solve is that over the years, the Indian Health Service and then tribal housing has drilled wells, but their criteria was that you had to be a tribal member. However, not that your property had to be in trust. So that's one of the things that we're going to have to work out in the future as well. While this is a very important piece of legislation, there are a lot of, as Seth has touched on in his presentation, a lot of work outlined to continue to protect tribal water resources. And it's much more than we've done in the past, even going to court. So we're switching from a legal to a scientific approach, and we need the folks to help us do that, help you do that. And the registration is just merely a recordation of those uses that already exist, because nobody's never asked the tribe, how much water do you use? They just go to DNRC and get a permit for development on fee lands. So this is an exercise that's intended to help protect those water uses into the future. We know some people are going to be nervous and not trust the system. We intend to provide as much assistance as possible to explain the purposes and to help people fill out those registration forms. It again is scheduled to open after the first of the year, and we'll have quite a few, well, not quite a few, we'll have 4 or more individuals who employed by that office who can assist people. And we intend to make everything as seamless as possible, but we can't predict, nor can we answer all those concerns before they occur. So we'll have to work through this together. Any questions?
Thank you.
Mike?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess one question I have, Rhonda, is I know the winner's doctrine anticipated that tribal uses would be developed over time, and they needed that protection of that 1855 or that treaty priority date. I'm wondering, will new uses by tribal members on our reservation also be able to access that 1855 priority date? And so they could outcompete already developed non-tribal uses in certain areas?
Well, we'll have the senior water right. So enforcement is something that we'll have to look forward to. If people are interfering with the tribe's water right or tribal uses or individual allottees or tribal members who purchase land, we'll have to seek enforcement of those and protection of those water rights. It doesn't solve all the problems, but what the water management ordinance does is give you a legal protection and a recognition by the state that they can't overdevelop into the future and stop or impair those water rights that exist for the tribes. It's a method, but you'll continue to have a need for attorneys to help with that enforcement. You'll continue to need scientific and technical people to be able to tell you what the impact of a proposed use is on your existing water. And with climate change, we've tried to identify a process by which those rights can be protected into the future, but you'll have to exercise due diligence on every proposal to create a new water use on the reservation.
Madam Chair, council members, couple points I'd add. One is we met yesterday in an all-day meeting with the leadership of the FIP staff. We're trying very hard to work cooperatively. We're going to provide a water resources training for them. We explained the water rights settlement and how it works. And we talked to them about how we can achieve the biological opinion. So in February, we will be offering a tribal full-day training for all of the FIP staff. That doesn't address the salary turnover issue, but we're trying to maintain a really positive interaction with them in a difficult time. Councilman Dolson, if a tribal member accesses the tribal water right for a new development in some fashion, they would secure the priority date of either time immemorial or likely the treaty date. If a tribal member is off on their own seeking a new development without the underlying tribal water right, the date of their water right would be the date that the appropriation right is perfected or passed through the unitary board. It would not be the treaty or older dates. Yeah. So if they can access the tribal water right, which is, large and pervasive, they could secure that older date.
And just a reminder, the irrigation project water rights, so we agreed would date back to the treaty date of 1865. However, those are tribal water rights, so they don't get to be necessarily expanded, transferred, any of those things. They'll have to follow the processes that have been set up.
This, the weight of, the UMO describes the permit review process as the preponderance of the evidence. And the tribes are going to, developers move quickly and they bring in consultants. And believe me, there is a universe of consultants that do nothing but water rights work. And so we are going to have to be prepared to both, scientifically, technically, and legally advocate on behalf of the tribes. And we're going to have to build up that capability some within the Natural Resource Department. I certainly can't speak to the legal office, but the Natural Resource Department will have to build that water rights technical skill set. We'll have to build it further. We know that, we're thinking about it.
Madam Chair, what we tried to do is develop a framework by which you could better protect tribal resources and water rights, but it will still take a lot of work. It won't be automatic.
And it will be perpetual. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, James, I answered your question in the chat.
Thank you.
So thank you for that information, Seth. That was really a lot to absorb. And
I know that.
I know that you sent us a PowerPoint separately, so probably when all this settles, I'm going to have more questions. I know that, but I know this isn't the first presentation that you'll give council. So does anybody have any questions for right away?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Bing.
Yeah, yesterday I was talking to an individual about her wells. And she has a couple of wells that she supposedly has to register, and she's looking down the road about them drying up, and more than likely have to re-drill those wells deeper. And she was wondering if, why she had to get them registered like that in order for her to just make her well deeper. But I told her, well, I said, she got to have them registered, but I don't know about getting them deeper like that. I said, I don't know anything about that. I said, but I know registering them you have to, but she's got I think she has about 5 different wells that she owns, and 3 of them she does have registered, she said, but the other 2 she doesn't. But she's looking like, down the road, just like on your side of the river there, Shelley, that these wells are going to dry up, and she's looking ahead to get these wells dug a little bit deeper, because a couple of years ago, a couple of them did go dry on her when we had that drought here 2 or 3 years ago. So anyway, that's, there's people out there wondering about this, with these wells going to go dry. So, I talked to her for about an hour or so yesterday, and she was asking me about it. So I just kind of wanted to find out from Seth what he thought about it.
I would encourage her to register her uses, because then it gives her the valid water right. And as far as deepening the wells, well, that I can't really speak to that. That could be considered a replacement well that would move through the process in a streamlined fashion. Yeah.
I would just like to add that some of those decisions will fall to the Water Management Board, and we'll want them to rely on science, not personalities or politics or any of those kinds of things. We're trying to be very careful about the things that people sitting on this board should know about, and will have to provide ongoing training and ongoing orientations. We're looking forward to doing that. And one of the things I need to point out is that we've developed the UMO and a working relationship between Legal and NERD and all other tribal programs that's very informal, and it has not been formalized. So we're doing this without really any authority or direction from the tribal council. And I think that the recent reorganization pointed out the dilemma in doing that. Now that Ryan is moving on, and he took implementation of the UMO and the whole water settlement with him when he went to administration, there was no ongoing organization appointed by the council to deal with these things that are going to come up in the future. So I encourage you to give that some thought. Just the fact that you have a lot of money now, you're going to have to protect that as well, invest it wisely. You have good people to do that, but it's going to be a really big job. It's and I encourage you all to maintain your interest in all of those aspects, because you're the leadership.
We injected, the last thing I would say is we injected the groundwater management areas into this ordinance. They're not, they're very, very, very few of those in the state of Montana, you know, less than 5. And it, to actually accomplish that is a lot of technical work, and then the legal underpinning that we're on solid ground. And it's a very, I think personally, a very powerful tool for the tribes, but it drives from tribal objectives and policy down to the technical level. It's looking at your reservation landscape and trying to define what you want tomorrow to look like. And that's one of the most powerful tools I think the tribes have, considering the mixed land ownership that you're dealing with. Yeah. So I think it's worth further conversation. Yeah.
Rhonda, you made a very good comment, and I'm actually quite concerned about how some of this stuff comes about and without council action. And, you know, I don't know if I totally disagree with what happened. It's just that not being a part of the decision-making when water rights moved from legal to administration, along with Ryan and all of that, it just seems like we're getting involved after the fact. And maybe Madam Chair knew, I'm just not sure. And maybe the council knew, maybe I just don't know. But I just kind of feel like I'm not a part of the process anymore. And I'm concerned about it, I guess. I'll just leave it at that for now.
I think it's always possible for you to develop that structure in the future, but my comment is just to urge you not to forget about it.
Well, I guess the question is, Madam Chair, what if we didn't want it moved? I mean, what if it was fine where it was at and now it's moved? And is it in limbo now that Brian's gone? And I mean, it's just such of a big issue, and I just, I worry. Thank you.
I think it's something we could address. The Natural Resources Department currently does not have a water rights function in the Division of Water and Engineering. It's not that it couldn't be recreated, and but that function does not exist right now.
Madam Chair, if I could just close with something we discovered this week, I think it probably draws you a picture of the problems we're facing. forestry was out doing a reconnaissance for a timber sale. And they discovered a pipe in one of the, it was on tribal land. It was in one of the creeks that flow into Flathead Lake. It was quite a sizable development. And the question was, should we rip the pipe out or what is the status? When the legal department checked the status, we found out that the state had issued a water right for the diversion, but we didn't know about it, and it was done without our permission and without our knowledge, and there was no right of way for the diversion to serve this particular housing development. There was a remark on the water right that the state issued saying that the tribes had a prior superior water right, and that won't come to light until the water court addresses all those applications for water rights. So that's something in the future. But these kinds of developments occur all the time. We've stopped the state from issuing water rights for those, but we're going to have to go back, figure some of these things out, and certainly be more diligent in the future.
Ron, did you say they lack a right of way for this pipe and development?
You're muted, Rhonda.
Neither the state nor tribal law allows you to put in a conveyance from a source of diversion to a place of use without a right of way. But those have developed out there and they occur all over the place.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Go ahead, James.
Thank you. I just want to say, Rhonda, thank you for all your years of working with the tribes and for the tribes, years as chair and department head in a variety of places. And just wanted to express that to you. Didn't always agree, but we agreed agreeably, or disagreed and agreed agreeably, both shades of that. But many blessings on you, and thank you for your service to our people. And it's greatly appreciated. And you know, you're in a job where you don't get a lot of thanks as attorneys. But thank you, Rhonda. Lemlemsh.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Seth or Rhonda before we move on to legal?
Thank you for your time. I'm going to leave at this point.
Okay, thank you, Seth. Have a good day.
Morning, Madam Chair, council members. So talking with Jen earlier today, it sounds like we're allowed to go into the lunch hour. Is that still correct, Madam Chair? A little bit anyway. We'll have 5 updates for the council this morning, and we'll request executive session for them all. Thanks.